Picture this. You're standing deep in a freezing, snow-covered mountain range, completely surrounded by the dark, unforgiving wilderness. It's deadly quiet. And right there, sitting in the middle of this frozen landscape, is a perfectly functional car, completely abandoned. There are no signs of a struggle, no signs of violence whatsoever, just a silent vehicle left behind in the snow. Now imagine driving into those mountains, ending up literally hundreds of miles away from where you were supposed to be. You've got a working car, right? But for some completely unknown reason, you step out of it. You leave your only shelter behind. As days turn into weeks and those weeks slowly bleed into months, your family is just left waiting. The profound mystery of why you left that car is a question that's going to haunt investigators for decades. That terrifying scenario, it isn't fiction. It was the harsh reality for 5 friends who vanished into the California wilderness in what has to be one of the strangest missing person cases in American history. Even today, nearly 50 years after they disappeared, experts, detectives, and loved ones still cannot definitively explain what actually happened to these 5 men out there in the freezing dark. So let's dive into this explainer and systematically unpack the bizarre evidence left behind in what people often call America's Dyatlov Pass, the chilling mystery of the Yuba County Five. We're going to look directly at the facts, lay out the evidence, and see if we can somehow make sense of a puzzle that has completely defied logic for half a century. Section 1. A normal night turns strange. February 24th, 1978. We're going to rewind to a completely normal Friday night that quickly and without warning became one of the strangest cases in American history. On that winter evening, these 5 friends, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Ted Wehar, Gary Mathias, and Jackie Hewitt, well, they had just attended a college basketball game in Chico, California. And these 5 young men from Yuba City were incredibly excited because the very next morning, they were scheduled to play in their own Special Olympics basketball tournament. Their families totally expected them home that night to get some rest before the big game, but they never returned. You see, the timeline of that evening is exactly what makes this whole thing so baffling. It was an absolutely ordinary outing that somehow derailed into the impossible. After the game ended, they stopped at a local convenience store to grab some snacks. Witnesses who saw them there later confirmed to investigators that the guys appeared perfectly happy and relaxed. There was no panic, no strange behavior whatsoever. But hours later, instead of taking the simple, familiar drive home, their car was discovered abandoned high up in the Plumas National Forest. That is a shocking 70 miles away from the route they should have taken. Section 2. The abandoned car. The first bizarre clue. The deeply unsettling condition of the vehicle searchers found high in those mountains, well, it only deepens the mystery. Because if finding the car 70 miles off-route was weird, the state of the car itself was completely mind-boggling. On one hand, the car wasn't damaged at all, it wasn't hopelessly stuck in the mud or the snow, and it had plenty of fuel left to keep running. The doors were unlocked, one window was rolled down, and, crucially, their warm jackets, maps, and personal belongings were still sitting right there inside. Yet despite having a safe, running vehicle, the men abandoned it. They actually chose to walk out into sub-freezing mountain conditions wearing only light clothing. So why leave a perfectly working car? Seriously, take a second to really think about that. You're out in the freezing snow. You have a running engine, a heater, and warm jackets sitting right there. Why on earth would all 5 of these men choose to walk away from their absolute best chance of survival? It just doesn't make any sense. Section 3. The cabin mystery. A heartbreaking discovery. For months, heavy snowpack completely halted any comprehensive rescue operations. The families waited in agony as winter slowly dragged on. Finally, as the snow began to melt, searchers made a horrific discovery inside a U.S. Forest Service emergency trailer located even deeper into the wilderness. Inside that trailer, they found the body of Ted Wehar. But what genuinely shocked seasoned investigators wasn't just where Ted was found, it was the fact that he had somehow managed to survive out there for weeks before ultimately succumbing to starvation and exposure. Now, the absolutely crucial point here is the baffling contrast of the scene. Inside this emergency trailer, there was food, blankets, matches, and heavy-duty heating equipment. There were literally enough supplies in that cabin to keep someone completely safe and alive for months. Yet almost none of it was touched. Most of the life-saving food rations had never even been opened. The heavy-duty heater sitting right there in the room never turned on. I mean, why endure freezing starvation when a literal feast and warmth are right at your fingertips? Well, the search continued around the area of the trailer. Investigators soon found the bodies of Bill Sterling and Jack Madruga nearby in the snow. Months later, the tragic remains of Jackie Hewitt were also discovered in the surrounding area. The grim scene had claimed 4 of the friends. But as searchers checked their lists, they realized one individual was entirely missing from this terrible equation. What happened to Gary Mathias? Despite massive search efforts spanning the entire region, not a single trace of Gary was ever found. He simply vanished. To this very day, his disappearance remains the most enduring, unsettling, and absolute missing piece of this entire puzzle. Section 4. The Unsolved Theories. Decades without answers. When you have a case with a working car completely abandoned, life-saving food ignored, a freezing death chosen over a warm cabin, and one man completely vanished, what are you left with? Without a single cohesive explanation, we have to look at the leading theories. First, that they simply became lost in the dark. Second, that they fled the vehicle because something or someone absolutely terrified them. Third, some point to Gary Mathias. His military experience and his struggles with mental illness suggest he might have heavily influenced the group's chaotic decisions. This theory considers the specific vulnerabilities of the men, as they faced varying cognitive challenges which could potentially make them more susceptible to panic or confusion under extreme duress. And finally, there's the theory of a sinister encounter, though zero physical evidence has ever been found to support foul play. Ultimately, note how all of these theories still fail to answer the core question. Why, once they reached the safety of the trailer, didn't they just eat the food or use the heater? And that brings us full circle. As this quote captures perfectly, the Yuba County Five stands as America's own Dyatlov Pass, a mystery that refuses to be solved. Nearly half a century later, it remains one of the most terrifying and perplexing unsolved enigmas in American history. 5 friends, one joyous night, and a string of irrational decisions that ended in icy tragedy. We've laid out the evidence, the timeline, and the baffling clues in this explainer. But the ultimate question remains, are the answers still hidden in the snow-covered forests of Northern California? What really drove them up that mountain? And what exactly happened in the dark? It's a haunting thought to leave you with, one that reminds us of the dark, cold secrets the wilderness has kept perfectly hidden for over half a century. Thanks for joining me, and keep questioning the unknown.